Anyway, well, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this little project of highlighting artists, leaders who are doing wonderful work in the world.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I've been following the series. I love it. I think it's a great idea, and I feel lucky to be included.
Awesome.
And, to have a good conversation with you today.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to these days, because you've kind of evolved in the last couple of years, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. Who am I? That's a good question.
Who are you?
Well, as you know, like we've known each other for what, 18 years, probably close to that, working in this space. And so, originally I was the founder of A Reason to Survive Arts, which is a creative youth development organization in San Diego, based in National City, and ran that for 16 years until I felt like I had done everything I could. I was also really extremely burnt out, and I was still in love with the mission and the work, but not my position as CEO. As a creative, as an artist, you get to the point where it evolves beyond you and your skill set. And you can always learn all these management skill sets, but that's not where my heart was. And at the same time, I was working with a lot of peers, my friends, we were running other organizations, and we kind of organically started meeting on a regular basis and just supporting each other, sharing challenges we were having. And there's I just saw that all these amazing organizations and individuals throughout San Diego were doing this work. And they were all facing similar challenges. I mean, running nonprofits, doing this work, it's hard, it's messy, it's difficult. And at the same time, in the last 2 years of running arts, I was being called into these national conversations around the field of creative youth development and similar challenges at the national level of what was happening. A lot of these organizations are community-based organizations, small, under $500,000. Many of them were shutting down. And so at the national level, it was sounding kind of an alarm saying, okay, why is this happening and how can we support these organizations? And so I was one of about 200 leaders that was called into these convenings over 2 years to try to answer that question. And that got me excited, this bigger picture of how do we work together? How do we work outside of our organizations to support each other and help each other? In the end, trying to get more equitable access for youth in these programs. Right. And so it was at that time, everything kind of came together at once where I made the decision. I was going to leave arts. Yeah. And it was really, really difficult decision. And then this national work coalesced and they came out with this blueprint, the National Endowment of the Arts funded this blueprint on how to strengthen the sector, how to strengthen these organizations. So when I made the decision to leave arts, I told board first, and I was then met with some of our funders, and one of them, the Claire Rose Foundation, knew that I was being called to do this other work. And we just got in a conversation what that would look like, how would I go about that? And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I should be a consultant or work independently. And then Ann Vincent, who's the president, made a strategic offer and said, why don't we do it together? She said, I've got money, you've got the expertise and the connections. Let's do this together, which was an amazing offer. And I didn't see it coming, but it was exactly what we needed to do. And so that's where I'm evolving into. So I left arts. I joined the Claire Rose Foundation about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And my work is really to implement this blueprint, this national creative youth development blueprint at the local level. Working with all the national partners. I'd say 3/4 of my time is spent locally, and about 1/4 of my time is spent nationally, working with these larger efforts at the national level. And so basically I wake up every day and but I work with all these individuals and organizations as part of the San Diego Creative Youth Development Network to listen to them, listen to what their needs are, and then support their needs. And so I'm on the funding side now, which is great. But I've also walked in all of their shoes, and I know exactly what they're going through, and I understand, and it enables us to have open, honest conversations where there's no power dynamics. I'm there to listen and understand and try to figure out how do we disrupt philanthropy a little bit to get money into these community-based organizations. And so that's a long, short story of where I am right now.
Right. Right. And for those that might be listening and don't know exactly what creative youth development is, can you just say a little bit about what that is? Because I've been talking about it a little bit, but we haven't really put out there, what are we talking about?
Right. And it's a new term. The term was really coined in 2014.
Okay.
In this first national convening, because everybody that's been in this field working, it's not a new field. Everybody's been doing this for years and years, decades and decades. But there wasn't a common language. Everybody was doing this work, but talking about it differently, approaching it a little bit differently. And so what we talked about was what would be the benefits of branding this field and giving it a name and giving it some structure so that we can better communicate what it is we're doing and get more resources. So basically, creative youth development depends on who you talk to right now, because everybody's got a different definition, but the framework
become one thing.
I know, and that's the beauty of it. It's not just one thing. Yeah. It's basically these youth arts programs that are intentionally designed for youth development outcomes, right? So the intent isn't to create amazing artists or musicians or dancers, even though that happens. Yeah. It's to using the arts to achieve youth development outcomes. And that's what you're really measuring. You're not measuring artistic excellence. That's one of the things you might look at, but you're looking at all these social emotional development, right? You're looking at 21st century skills and all these youth development, peer-to-peer relationships, using the arts as that vehicle, because there's millions of youth out there that the arts are their thing, right? Yeah. That's their path in life. That's their hook. And then you wrap around all these support services. So you've got a program, whether it's at Monarch or Reasons to Survive, where the arts are the main focus, but then you've got mental health services, right? You've got counseling, you've got leadership development, academic support. So a holistic approach, using the arts at the center to help kids reach their full potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've really gathered all these folks who are doing that already in San Diego together with the network. You're kind of working to put a whole umbrella together where all these people are interconnected, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as you know, working in this field or working in nonprofits, everybody can be very siloed and everybody's kind of in competition, for the small amount of dollars there are. But we really believe that there's power in the network, power in numbers, and for a lot of different reasons. And so the National Action Blueprint, even though it's national, they're depending on local leaders and networks to implement it.
Yeah.
And so the three core areas of this blueprint are around professional and leadership development. Mm-hmm. There's a section around evaluation. How do you measure your impact? And then storytelling. How do you communicate your impact, right? And then there's another bucket that's all around funding, right? And advocacy and policy change and getting more funders to know about the work and fund the work. So that's the framework we work within with the network. So the San Diego Creative Youth Development Network is really an ecosystem, because we didn't just want people working in creative youth development at the table. We wanted anybody that had an interest in strengthening the field at the table. So that looks like providers, it looks like collaborators, arts education organizations, arts institutions, also partners, funders, civic leaders, community leaders, anybody that can help strengthen, right? We don't want to be just our providers around a table talking about our needs. So it's evolving, it's emerging. I think we've got about 23 to 24 members, for lack of a better word, that are part of the network. I think we've spent the first year and a half really defining what the network is, who everybody is, how we operate, so that now we can expand further and bring more people under the umbrella. But it is really bringing people together, right? For peer learning opportunities, for trainings. How do we create a shared evaluation tool so everybody's measuring the same thing? And how do we communicate rather than individual organizations? How do we communicate the field of what we're doing?
Yeah.
How do we go over collective funding opportunities, right, as a network that wouldn't be available for individual organizations?
Yeah.
How do we speak with one voice with advocacy? So that's the work that we're really doing, to really build public awareness, but also engage the greater community to know about what we're doing and to support what we're doing.
That's so awesome. I know I was super excited when I found out what you guys had been doing, because there are all these little organizations that are just kind of out there, and it's so exciting to realize how many people are doing this work in our community.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them that aren't even at the table yet, right? We want them to be at the table, and we're open. Like, we're very, if you're doing this work, and there's a lot of practitioners that don't work with nonprofit organizations, or there's a lot of, that's why we're very intentional. That's organizations and individuals, anybody that works within this space, and there's so many of them, and they're doing incredible work, but they're all facing the same struggle. So it's like, okay, how do we work together?
Yeah.
And so there's no silver bullet, but I think that we can come up with solutions collectively. For
sure. Yeah. So what's something that you're working on right now that you're particularly excited about?
Oh, there's so many things.
Or something you recently did that you were super excited about.
Oh, there's so many things now. Well, I think it's like, let's see. It's been very active. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff around advocacy and policy that I'm excited about. There's one of the things I'm really excited about is that we do this work as adults, right? Like, we're practitioners, and we have these nonprofit organizations, and we're working like to serve youth, but we rarely include youth in these conversations, right? And that's really goes against every value of creative youth development, where youth voice is centered. And so I think some of the most exciting work right now is how we are centering youth voice in all the work that we do. And so what does that look like? And I'll give you 3 examples of where that appeared in the last couple of weeks, right? So we went up to, we brought about 12 leaders up to Sacramento for Arts Advocacy Day. And when I say leaders, it's both adults and young leaders too. So we had 6 young artists that came up to Arts Advocacy Day with us. And they weren't just there to sit on the periphery and kind of observe. We had 3 of them that spoke from the Capitol stairs. We had 2 of them that were documenting and filming the whole day, and which we'll have a video that comes out soon. So they were really integral. They sat in these meetings with legislators and talked and gave their views, and those were the most impactful
voices,
conversations and voices. Yeah. You've got that part, the advocacy part. We just had Arts Amplifying Youth Summit a couple weeks ago, where it's a youth planned, youth designed, and youth run summit that has a leadership cohort of about 12 youth that work for about 6 months to define an issue that they want to address. This year it was safety. What does it mean to feel safe as an individual, at school, in the community? And that was extremely exciting to watch. Like, last year I led it, but I stepped way back this year and engaged another amazing individual, Derek Hodges, who you've interviewed before, to be the main mentor for these youth. And just to watch what he did with those youth and just see the leadership and just see them really own it was incredible. And so, and then we went to Boost, which is the after-school, the largest after-school conference in the country. And you were there. We brought 5 or 6 youth to that, and they were in the workshops. They were facilitating workshops. They weren't. So it's really exciting for me to see like youth really become the center of the work, and not just us sitting there talking about them, but having them really drive the conversation. So that's some of the most exciting stuff. And for me, not working at Arts and not having a lot of engagement with youth on a regular basis, personally for me, it's very fulfilling that I get this interaction with the youth again, because sometimes I can feel so separated from it and all this other work. But so yeah, those are 3 great examples of how youth are really being centered in the work that we do and informing the work that we do.
Yeah, I was at the youth summit too, and I was, I'm an expressive arts therapist. I've been doing this for 17 years or something, and I was in a workshop with a 16-year-old girl taking notes, That's a really great activity you just did there.
Wasn't it amazing?
Yeah.
In terms of just like, I just love observing and watching, like, and just at the end of that summit where the theme was safety.
Yeah.
And you had all these youth who had never really met each other before come into a space to talk about the issue. But also by the end, you had young artists who had never written poetry before or music and get up and read it in front of people about very vulnerable topics. And for me, that was the like epitome of success, that those youth really created a safe space and held a safe space. And the courage it takes, to put yourself out there like that. And so that was incredible. And just listening, me and you were sitting there together, just listening to like facilitation, like, man, like, we're going to be okay. Yeah. Plus, just like these leaders that ran it, these young leaders were like, okay, we're in good hands. The future's in good hands if these young leaders are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So it was, yeah.
Yes, that was phenomenal. And I really applaud you guys for kind of putting your money where your mouth is on that whole effort. And I really see that growing. And we're already here at Monarch going, how can we replicate that? Or how could we be involved in that? Or how can we do something like that here? Because that's the edge that we're on right now too, where we're like, youth leadership is the next step. So I just think it's brilliant that you guys are moving in that direction. And I was floored just getting to know them at Boost and watching them at work at the summit. It was really exciting. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, that what we want to do is kind of inspire others, right? Like we want to be everything that we do in San Diego, because San Diego is being seen nationally as a model. Yeah. And so we're trying to document everything we do. We're trying to show how we're doing it. We're learning a lot. We're succeeding. We're failing. But we want to be able to inspire others and show others how it's done and learn from our mistakes, learn from our successes. And so it's really great to hear that you guys are inspired. And how do you do that work here? And it seems like it's easy to like youth leadership and centering youth voice. At the national level, having the same conversations, like people think they're doing it, but they're not. Like, how do you truly, and what it comes down to is trust and handing over power, right? There's all these inherent power dynamics between adults and youth. And like, we know what's best, right? And our experience. So how do you balance like the experience that we all have to support the youth, but not it's just a shift in power.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, we've been in a process with that just now at Monarch, where we're allowing youth leaders to just have conversations with like the teens about, what do you want this community to look like? What do you want school to feel like? What kind of programming do you want here? And the place where I see the kids need the most support is just with leadership and just with how to have those conversations, how to create a safe space. And then once they do, things will open up. So and that's why exactly what you were saying about the summit was so successful, because clearly it worked, because by the end of the day, you had kids like sharing out super personal things and super empowered, in front of this group. How many people were there? Like, it was a huge group of people. So yeah, so it was an awesome example.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, what the young people need is just professional leadership development, right? Yeah. And so that's what this group, so it's beautiful to see too that this summit leadership team is really evolving into a year-long program now. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to expand it. Right now there's 12 youth, and all we've been focusing on for 2 years is this is this summit. But we, as a network, we also looked around the table like, wow, well, there's all adults around the table. Like, where are the youth? Yeah. And so we decided, okay, we need a youth council, a youth leadership, and have representation from that at the network table as well. And so we just said, well, why don't we just make this event team, the summit team, into a year-round program. Yeah. And the event is one of the things they do, but they will also provide them with leadership development, professional development, speaking, public speaking. They'll be the youth that we bring to Arts Advocacy Day, or or conferences, both local and national. That's another thing we do. We bring these youth all across the country. Many times it's the first time they've ever been on a plane before.
Right.
And so giving them that opportunity and then really including them, like we'll go out to dinner with all these people from around the country and the youth will be at the table. And you don't really think about it, but it's really impactful for them. That was one of the things I heard from the youth back from Boost, just being able to be an equal, sitting at the table at dinner with us was hugely impactful for them.
Yeah.
And so how do we create this structure and support system where we can provide the leadership and professional development that they need to carry out the work that they want to do and then get out of the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. Woo. Super.
Yeah.
So, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit because something you said at the very beginning that is really fascinating to me after having been in this sort of nonprofit world for such a long time, is about burnout. And is about like, I'm really curious now that you've kind of shifted your role and you're in this new role, but really at your heart, you're an artist.
Yeah.
And that's really what got you here.
Right.
I have a couple of questions about like what keeps that part of you alive?
Yeah.
What are your practices around keeping your artist alive? And then I have some other things that I'd love to ask too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge issue in the nonprofit space, right? Burnout, because we all get into it for the right reasons. Yeah. We're all very passionate about what we do, and we always want to do more than we actually can, right? We don't create healthy boundaries because the need is so much greater than we could ever provide, but we do it to ourselves sometimes, right? And that's one of the reasons why I left arts, right? It was a struggle for about 2 years where the artist in me was gone. Like I saw arts as my canvas for a long time. It was my work of art. I put my own art making to the side a little bit because I was getting so much creative fulfillment out of creating the organization. Yeah. And that was like, whenever I get burnt out, like you push through that. And that's another thing where it's so critical that you are so passionate and purposeful about this work because it's hard. And it's that passion and that purpose that helps you get through those times of burnout or just despair. But in the last couple of years of arts, it had grown, right? It's like it had grown because I kept on creating, which isn't always a good thing because whatever you create, you have to sustain, and that's hard to do.
Right. But there's an editing process.
Editing, it's like you always have great ideas. Oh, let's do this, and I think I was fairly successful in creating that, and then finding the resources to do that. But to do that continually, I finally realized I'm like, I can't create anymore. I shouldn't create anymore. This just needs to like move into the next stage of sustainment. And the leadership style that I brought to the organization that helped build it was not what it needed moving forward, right? Yeah. So I'm back to being a creator again, right? So when I was leaving arts, I looked in the mirror, I'm like, who are you? I mean, I was so like physically, mentally, spiritually, artistically bankrupt. Mm-hmm. I wasn't happy. I wasn't being like good to myself. I wasn't like the husband or the dad I really should have been and could be because I was just burnt. And so I went through an exercise of like, okay, what brings me joy? What brings me fulfillment? And what drains me? What takes me away? And I've worked with coaches. I've worked with therapists. I still do, which is like one of the greatest thing anybody can do is get that outside counsel, right? And so at heart, I'm an artist, so I need to be creating. And so I feel like I'm back there again, creating all this new potential, working with other very creative people. So, but in a way that's less stressful. Like it's stressful in certain ways because I'm one that always like there's a sense of urgency and there's so much that needs to get done. But I don't have some of the very real and debilitating stresses that come with running an organization sometimes. Right. So I'm also able to create space to do my own art again, and whatever that looks like. So my practice, I get up very early. I'm a morning person. And I'm a visual artist, but I've learned not to pigeonhole myself to like do visual art all the time. I just want to be creative. So what can I do creative every morning, whether it's writing, whether it is drawing or doing some painting, but what can I be creative, like artistically in the morning? Is usually my time to do that when it's quiet, and I've got my own workspace and kids are asleep, stuff like that. So I'm able to reintroduce that into my life and really look at, I think we all need different things at different stages of our lives. Well, I'm 47 now, different than when I was 29 when I started arts, or when I was 40. And what do I need and want in my life right now? And I want to get that artist back. I think it's good for me, my family.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
It absolutely does. I think just having that, looking at our artists on a larger, through a larger lens, like I'm an artist because I'm creating.
Yeah.
And those really artistic creative practices that we ground in. And I have a similar practice with meditation and writing and doodling and just little things, like even for like a half hour in the morning.
That's right.
So super grounding.
Yeah. And just, as you said, being creative. I love the word creativity. Because I think it's more accessible to people. I think one of the issues that we face with the arts, right, or funding, or it's the arts are kind of just the word itself are very exclusive, it seems like, right? When people think of the arts, it's like, oh, I'm not an artist, or else the arts are like the fine arts. But really at the heart of what and why this work is so important that we all do, and that instilling it in youth is being creative. Like creativity is a driver for everything, I believe, right? And it's like, and not just that, I mean, especially in the work that we do, like the need for expression is a human need, right? The need for creativity in our lives is a human need, right? And so I think part of the work we're doing right now with this network and within the field is framing it a little bit differently, right? So that it's a little bit more digestible and understandable and relatable to people, right? Of like, everybody needs creativity. Everybody depends on artists. Whether you look at it or not, like you get dressed, I'm like, everything came from an artist. Somebody had to design everything, like the desk, the lamp, the computer, like it all comes from artists. I don't want to get up on that tangent, but so.
I think that also just having, giving ourselves and giving youth that sense that I am the creator of my life and my destiny is and if I can create and shape a thing of beauty that I can share with others, interact with others around, that's empowering. And then I can go and create relationships that are healthy. I can go and create a pathway for myself that's fulfilling and purposeful, and it gets sort of that creator energy going.
Yes, that's exactly right. Create your own destiny. That's like create yourself. Create your identity. That's what it is at the heart of it.
We want.
Yeah. And we all have the power to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you start with the individual. You have to start with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we do in the work that we do is we support young people in understanding that and owning it. Yeah. And then they carry that forward. You start with self and you go out to community and society and bring it together. And so that's really the essence of what we're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Are there any artists or thinkers or anything that bring you inspiration these days?
Quite honestly, it's everybody that we're working with in the network, right? I mean, I can't pinpoint a single person, but just like connecting with you, Rachelle, and now you're helping to do a lot of like training, professional development, or just, I'm always in awe and inspired by all these local artists and leaders. And many of them you've already had on your interviews that I get excited when somebody new comes to the table. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. How did I not know about this person, right? It's like, so I think that like right now that's where I'm drawing a lot of inspiration from, are all these, we just had a meeting on Friday with the network. We meet the second Friday of every month. And those are like, I work by myself mostly these days. Like, and I look forward to it, just like, and we always run out of time because everybody's just so energetic. We have work to do, but like that social networking time of just understand, listen to what everybody's doing. It's like, it's amazing. So whether it's, Brandon at David's Harp, or the work that Derek's doing, the work that you're doing at Monarch, or, I don't want to like leave anybody out, but there's such a rich fabric of community-based arts practitioners and organizations that are under the radar, that are doing some of the most impactful work in San Diego. And I constantly draw inspiration. And that's what keeps me going too. It's like a lot of the work that we're doing right now is like long-term. If you're looking at like systems change and policies and advocacy, but to see like the day-to-day work that these organizations are doing. And of course, the young people like that we work with are the biggest inspiration to me. So I know that's not a specific answer, but it's really,
no, it's real. And it's really
the truth.
Yeah. And it's exactly why I'm having so much fun doing this little interview show, because I just feel like I get to talk to so many cool people who are now becoming my friends and my colleagues and my partners in my tribe. And we've got an incredible group of people here in San Diego. And I look forward to being a part of that rippling out and connecting on a bigger scale. Yeah.
And I talked earlier about just like the direct things we're doing with these organizations, right? Of the professional leadership development, the evaluation and storytelling. But what I found most fascinating and what is the true is some of the indirect impact, right? Where we're all coming together and all these like side partnerships and things are emerging that wouldn't happen if everybody wasn't in the same space or connecting with each other. Every day I'm like, I hear like people doing all this work on the periphery because of this connectiveness, whether it's network or whether it's your work doing everything with these interview series. It's like, oh, I want to work with that person. I didn't know that person existed. Let's do some work together. So I think that's where you really create the movement, right? If you're trying to create a movement, it's like one person at a time, but like you can't control it. Like you just hold the space and you bring people together and they just start connecting organically with each other.
Yeah. That's super exciting. So I'm curious for you, where did your passion for working with youth come from? And I'm curious if it had anything to do with you finding your own artist at a certain point in your life, or like, you know, what was the connection for you that you were like, I want to give this to kids?
Yeah, well, it's so obviously I was an artist since I was born, but I didn't really know it all the time. I had really difficult time in school. Like I had a hard time learning, and I felt like a failure. And so I defined myself as a failure. Like, and I'd act out in different ways just to like distract from my like lack of confidence, because when everybody else is getting A's and B's, I'm like, I'm getting D's and F's, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? And so that's how I held my view of myself for a very long time, like that I was less than. I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know where I belonged. And it's tough and this is like elementary school. And then in 6th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Ferguson, she was my homeroom teacher, but she was also like our science teacher. But on the side, she was also an amazing artist. And so you give us free time to draw and stuff. And like, and one day she came up to me and was like, wow, that's incredible. And all the kids came around because I was doing a drawing, and all of a sudden, like, my identity changed. I wasn't a failure anymore. I was an artist. I'm like, okay, this is who I am. This is my thing. Okay. And so from that point on, really art became my go-to whenever I needed an escape or needed to feel good about myself. That became my identity. And then later, what really coalesced everything was when I was a freshman in college studying art. And my mom and my sister were both diagnosed with cancer within a couple of months of each other. I stayed home that year, the following year, which would have been my sophomore year, and both of them were going through chemo at the same time. And obviously, as you would assume, it was really, really difficult. And I have always been one that really looks for meaning in everything. Like, why do things happen? But during that year, my refuge was my room. I would go up to my room, close the door, put on my Grateful Dead, and paint. Mm-hmm. And then, as you know, as an artist, like you go in this state of flow, right? Where everything just disappears, and like 3 hours come back and you're like, wait, what just happened? Yeah. And it's just so powerful. I remember one day when my mom was on hospice downstairs, I just went up to the room. I was so angry and sad and just like distraught. Put on the Grateful Dead and painted, and like 3 hours later, I'm like dancing around my painting. I was full of joy. And it just struck me. I was like, what? Wow. And my parents had been involved with nonprofits growing up, and they're on boards and volunteering and stuff. And so I already was aware of nonprofits, and I don't know how it came to me, but it all just came to me like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is why this is happening. I'm supposed to create a nonprofit that provides the same opportunity for kids like me who are artistic and are facing pain, right, and trauma, whatever that looks like. I had my room to go to paint and listen to music. I want to create an art center where kids can come, forget about what they're going through, and just escape and express themselves. So that was the initial impetus. And I sat down and read and wrote a mission statement. And even I talk about the Grateful Dead because the name came from a Grateful Dead song. There's a song that was on at the time called Touch of Grey. And the chorus is like, I will get by, I will survive. And I was like, yeah, art gives me a reason to survive. And that became the name of the organization. So I think like many other people that get into this work, there was a personal impact at an early age of how the arts impacted me. And so for me, youth are it, right? It's like they're thrown into these circumstances and situations that are beyond their control, whether they're health related or, abuse, as homelessness. Like they don't have the capacity to, as adults do. I think everybody needs the arts, but I think specifically focused on youth has always been kind of the heart of everything I wanted to do. Yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard it before, but it's great to just hear straight from you and see the ripple effect that's had since that moment in your bedroom. At what that choice has, the impact that you've had. It's really incredible.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel very fortunate. I look back now of finding that purpose when I was 19 years old. And it was really it was really loud and clear in my head. This is my purpose in life.
Yeah.
I'm an artist. I was given these talents and I'm going through this experience because I'm supposed to do this. And I don't know how I connected the dots.
Right.
Within that day, within a half hour, but the dots were connected.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was hard. When I decided to leave arts, because I'm well, arts was my purpose. And I knew I still wanted to work in this space, but it was really difficult. And it was really, when I made the decision to leave, it was very traumatic.
Yeah.
Because people thought, I think maybe from the outside, people thought it was easy. I'm I'm just going to go work for this foundation. The foundation didn't happen until after I made the decision, but
right.
I came home to my wife and I was like, I'm done. And she was like, oh, here we go again. She hears it 6 times a month. But I'm like, no, I'm done. Really, I'm done. She's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know? But I went out back with my wine and I was like, and it was just it all hit me at once. I'm done. And then I immediately, I felt like a failure.
Yeah.
I failed. I couldn't take it to the next level. Right.
Yeah.
I felt guilt. I'm going to let a lot of people down, by quitting. Right. Yeah. The youth, the staff, the board, donors.
Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah.
Right. Of what? The unknown. Right. I felt I was drinking wine, but I felt I was in AA. I was I surrender. God. I really had a conversation with God and my mom. I'm I surrender. I don't know what to do. Yeah. Show me the way. Yeah. I know I'm not supposed to be on this path anymore, but show me the path. I still know I want to work in this space, but arts was not the vehicle any longer.
Right.
And it took me a year really to work through all of that.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. So now where you are now, as people are watching this, if they want to get involved in what you're creating now, or if they want to support what you're creating now, what's the best way for people to get involved?
Well, I think, as you say, it probably there's lots of different ways, but I think join the network, right? The network's an ecosystem, and we don't define everybody has some capacity to add value, right? Whether it's money, whether it's expertise, whether it is connections, right? Or so we want to grow this ecosystem, and I think reach out to me, right? Is one entry point of like how to get involved with the network, and then I think we've set up enough structure to see like where people fit in, right? And if you're not coming through the network, I would encourage them to look on the website, look at all the organizations, and if one speaks to them, whether it's around dance or visual arts or music, get involved. Like at the end of the day, I'm in service to all these organizations. And at the end of the day, we're trying to strengthen those organizations. So people can get involved at any different level. And I would encourage them. These organizations need financial support. Yeah. They need board members. They need teaching artists. They need all, the needs are pretty similar across the board for all of them. Yeah. But depending on what you have to offer and what your interests are. So
the website where they would go is
SDCYDN. So SDCYDN.org.
.org. Okay.
Yeah, you can sign up for the mailing list. You can like contact me directly. And so, yeah, it's really just like we want to create a movement. So we want to be able to just bring as many people along this ride as possible who really believe that the arts are critical to helping youth reach their full potential and providing equitable access to them. So it's a lot of fun, as you know, like join the club, we're going places.
It is. Okay, so SDCYDN.org, and you guys are on Facebook and you're on Instagram.
Yeah, we're getting all that set up. We're on all social media channels. We're trying to, and even the ones that we don't really know too much about, we're getting, letting the young people can help drive that. But yeah, it's I think what we're trying to do is build awareness, build a movement, build on a lot of different digital platforms, whether it's the website, social media. We have an e-blast that goes out. So we're getting organized, and we're trying to organize a lot of other people around this issue. So we welcome more and more people that want to support this work. It's needed. So I think that it's to create more individuals, but I think my call to action is around foundations and institutional givers that support this work. And I think part of my job now as a foundation is to educate these foundations and funders about giving. Yeah, and I don't want to be like presumptuous around that, but having run a nonprofit, the philanthropic system is broken. And it's based on a structure of power, right, and of control from the foundations that really inhibit and hurt nonprofits that they support. Right. By putting lots of restrictions on them, by not, it's not rocket science, right? Claire Rose Foundation, our giving it's trust-based philanthropy. We get to know all these organizations, we get to know the leaders, and we listen. Yeah. We ask one question: what do you need? Yeah. And they inform what we provide. So they need general operating support, unrestricted general operating support that gives them the flexibility to adapt and pivot, because their worlds are always changing in these small organizations, right? They need professional leadership development. So I think part of the work that, if there's any foundations out there listening, is that we need to do better. Yeah. We need to do better as a sector, because the way that it's structured right now, that foundations hold a lot of power, and they dictate to the nonprofits that they support how and why and how these organizations need to fit into what they're doing. Right. And so if they're given a creative youth development, if that's a passion, that's great. But given the limited capacity of these organizations, they create a lot of structures and systems that make it very inequitable for these organizations to access the money. Mm-hmm. Rather than saying, what do you need? Yeah. And then handing over the control and power to the organization. So that's a call to action, or for individuals and foundations to really share power
Mm-hmm.
and not control how organizations should spend their money.
Yeah.
I just want to get that out there because I think it's an important message.
Yeah, it's super important. And since Monarch has been using that more as a model and working with our supporters around that kind of model, we've just been able to grow exponentially and be able to have an impact we were not able to have before, when we were relying on little grants and things, all these little specific ways of being and things that are not reflective of the work that we're doing. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other last words for anybody that has listened all the way through and is still with us?
No, I think it's just whoever's listening that's got an interest in this field, get engaged, right? As we said before, I guess I am repeating myself, like reach out to the network, reach out to local organizations and support them. I mean, they're doing incredible work. And so, yeah, just support your community-based arts programs, creative youth development, as we call it now. But yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your passion and your insights and a little bit about your own story and how you've reinvented yourself. It's really exciting to see what you're doing now and how you're continuing that mission and passion in a much bigger capacity.
Yeah, and congratulations to you. You're reinventing yourself now too, right?
I am.
So congratulations to you. As artists, we always have to reinvent ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's more exciting when we get to do it with others.
That's right. That's right.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks, Rachelle.
Have a great day.
We'll see you soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.